Welcome to the Bike War Show. My name's Mark, and today we're going to be talking about the Atlanticans. And I'm joined today with our guests and special hosts, Drew from Nine Tail Hobbies, Anthony
Hey.
from Traders Galaxy, and Stuart from UK, and expert painter extraordinaire. Welcome all.
Hi.
Thanks, Mark.
Hey.
We've got a lot to talk about today. And I think the best way to lead in will be Anthony giving us a bit of an update on what's going on with Traders Galaxy.
Well, as usual, like lots of stuff is happening at Traders Galaxy. And sometimes I feel that there's so much stuff happening that it just boggles my mind. Like 1 minute, like there can be so many things, pots on the boil at once. You never quite know which one is going to be cooked first. So as everybody probably is aware, we have the Kickstarter for Beat 'em Up, currently 247% funded. It seems to hover around that 250% funded stage. I did actually add a bunch of new goals on there only yesterday, the day before, I think. But I'm pretty pleased with how it's gone anyway, how it is at the moment. I think we've got 10 or 11 days left to go. 10 days because it's 21st here in Australia today. So even if it stayed as it is, I'm pretty pleased with it. We'll get all that stuff easily. It'd actually be reasonably small on the scale of pre-orders that we've done recently with like Red Star and stuff, but that's still fantastic for the first resins of the 30mm range. So, I'm pretty pleased with that. And we've got Red Star Infantry being released 1st of September. For Rise of Democracy in the 30mm range. And I think, Mark, you were looking forward to those because it's got the reinforcements there that you can fill out your squads with and take the characters out.
We'll have to do another play test soon. I get to have another.
Yeah, well, we've got the city table here, and you've got your city table coming along.
I do.
So that'll be pretty good. And we've got quite a big one, the Hive Lords coming 1st of September.
And that's for
which I think people are going to really, really enjoy. I think they're going to take infestors from like here to like here. I think people are really going to like those. But yeah, 1st September.
That's exciting. And Beat 'em Up's almost finished?
Beat 'em Up, yes. Beat 'em Up is almost finished.
So get your pledge in if you're watching the show.
Yes.
Soon. There's a lot of great additional miniatures there and available, and it's already funded.
Yes. Yeah. I think it funded in like 24 hours.
Yes.
Less than 24 hours. But yeah, that was pretty fantastic. I was really pleased. You're always nervous when you go into these things that, people don't get it. But yeah, no, it was great to have that support. So I'm really pleased with that.
Well, it's good.
That's it, really. I don't want to go into too much because obviously there's tons of stuff happening, but I've only just given you the next couple of weeks.
And we can obviously expand on that with the next show, but we've got a big thing to discuss now, and that's the Atlanticans. I know the faction guide's fairly new. You've just got it out. And I know the guys, everybody here has put a list together, and we're going to talk through some of the new units now and then talk about some strategy regarding that. So what I really love, obviously, as we go across here, that one. I'm sure everybody can see that on their screen now. We've got the Atlantican faction guide there on the screen, I'm assuming. And you can obviously
yes, you have
that wonderful unit there on the front. Anthony, talk us through the inspiration and artwork here for the Atlanticans and why you chose that for the cover.
I actually now can't remember. Isn't it terrible? I can't actually remember which artist did that, whether it was JP or Alan. It might be Alan. I'm really sorry, JP or Alan. I'm actually unsure who did that because it was actually done quite a long time ago now, because the Atlantican guide was going to be out sooner. But some lovely guy in the UK took such a long time painting some amazing miniatures that it got delayed. He's a lovely bloke though, and he does awesome painting, so he can be forgiven. But yeah, that's really. But yeah, I'm pretty pleased with overall, like the artwork on the cards and all that sort of stuff. I know Alan did the new concepts for the Mud Warriors and the Air Warriors, but I'm just not sure about the cover.
Well, the cover's great. Obviously it's got that bot coming out of the water. Obviously.
Oh, not bot, Tritonort.
Well, that's true.
It's not. He's piloted.
Because they're starting to lose their bots, aren't they, Anthony?
Yes.
It's obviously the law. So do you want to catch us up on the law there?
Well, I've got to be careful because I caused a big ruckus when I said this on the Facebook group a while back, remember? I think someone actually quit because I said it.
That's the law. That's the law, Anthony. Those evil coils have captured more code.
Yeah, so it just comes down to like where there's always been a bit of a mystery where the Atlantican code, that like all the bots and all that sort of stuff is the law is, it's hard to, like, I don't really make any distinction between like a spirit, a soul, or program code in bot war. So they're all sort of interchangeable words for the same sort of nebulous thing that really provides the soul to the bots. And where does that soul come from? Like, obviously the Valiants are the soul first and the body is built around them. And then same thing with the Deceivers, just a corrupted version of that. But where does the Atlantican code come from? Where does the coils code come from? And there's been sort of like some I've deliberately sort of kept some mystery about where that comes from. Like, it could be that the Atlantican bots were Deceivers that King Gil's sort of found and modified.
Well, that's the story of Omen, isn't it, really?
Well, actually, some people have speculated that Omen is one of the Beast Lords or a Beast Noble. And so... yeah, that's right. So I've deliberately kept that also a bit of a mystery because I think you need to have some mysteries in the lore. So I actually don't know. It's not like something I know that I'm keeping from people, like, on purpose. But I haven't really. I've deliberately not delved deeper into it to try and come up with a definitive answer on it.
So obviously with the Tritonors, they're piloted. I know the Air Warriors now are piloted. We'll probably talk about that shortly.
It doesn't. It's only a lore difference. It doesn't really matter about the model as such. Like, the model's not really any different.
And then
because the models already had piloting places for them, for built into them anyway.
And then you've got the Oceanids, which are a new structure, which we'll talk about tonight. And obviously they're sort of coming from Leviathan, really, aren't they?
Yeah, each of the elementals, like, as the elemental lore expands, which is I think a lot of people are interested in that elemental lore sideline story, because each of the elementals, like the main ones, what you see with the combiner, or what we're going to be calling the elemental avatar, is like a reduced version of the real thing. Like, that's why it's an avatar. It's like a representative of the real thing. So the real thing is actually way more powerful than what, like, the combiner is. But each of those had like lesser spirits that they created in order to serve them. And so you've got like a hierarchy within the elementals. So obviously the Destroyer has golems. You'll see Volcano will have like the fire spirits, and then the Oceanids are ones for Leviathan. So the Oceanids will be out in Bot War and Rise of Democracy as well.
Awesome. And when can we expect those? Because I know for my
it's already sculpted, but it's not in a pose that I like, and it's a bit of a, like, the pose, it just needs a little bit of work. And it's only because the sculptor is working, and I've just seen the first T-poses tonight. Well, T-pose was what we call the unposed model of Craw's warband. Looks amazing. And so as soon as he finishes Craw's warband, then all those little side jobs will be sorted out, like the beat 'em up clowns and all those little things, because we can whip through them like really fast.
Yep.
It's just Craw's was such a, because we took, if you guys know, seen the concepts, it was quite a different direction for some, like compared to some of the more square looking bots and stuff that we'd done in the past. So we just wanted to trial something, make something like quite different in order to see, you know, what we could do with it and stuff like that. So, but it's they're looking good.
And we'll get a chance to talk to Sievers in a future podcast / videocast.
Yeah, that'll be a future one, and there's some big news coming with that. So like some really big news I think people are going to absolutely love.
All right, well, we'll watch that space. With that in mind, though, what we've got here is, I know we've got Richard had done an army up at one stage, which I managed to pull down on the Facebook page, and I think you can all see that. And it showed one of the older armies with, obviously, you've got your Kraken tanks and command tanks.
I think they're all there. Mostly they look all reasonably current.
Yep.
Figures, I think. But he did that on the Beasts of War blog or the Beasts of War website as a like a working blog. What do you call them? Project, yeah. As a project, he went through in stages and showed everyone how he did it and stuff like that.
It's a pretty cool army. I just had to show it because obviously it shows a lot of them up there. I mean, some of the new units aren't up there. You know, we've got some of the things we'll talk about tonight with Duke Aquarius and the like. I know he's not up there. But, you know, as that shows some of the existing stuff. I mean, the Oceanids aren't obviously there for the same reason. But it's a good size army. And I know some of those units will be showing in some of our lists that we'll be presenting to everybody tonight. But
I'm quite intrigued by these metallic type paints.
Yeah.
I've just been investigating paints for the last week, and I'm just like thinking, because I know that one of the artworks I really like for one of the concept arts I really like is the one for Omen, and JP did all his body in like a metallic orange. I've just never used metallic paints myself, and I'm just like, I don't know. But
I'm going to be doing my Hive Lords in a similar paint scheme.
Oh yeah, great.
With the metallics and everything, but it's going to be different colors, obviously.
I think with Bot War metallics can really work. Like I've never really played a game where you would do all metallics, and I'm just thinking, man, it could actually look really good. It might be worth trying.
Yeah, the Vallejo metallics are really, really good, especially their gunmetal and steel. And if you base it and then you use a transparent paint like a contrast or a speed paint and lay it over it, that you can get that effect really easily and still get the depth and the shadows and everything. It's not a lot of work.
Yeah.
It's called candy appling. I kind of used a similar technique when I painted Omen.
Yeah.
The guys works really well.
I'm not quite brave enough to try it yet. I guess I'm just not 100% sure how I'm going to highlight it, or like whether you even need highlights for it, or how it works. Like it's so foreign to me, but I think I will eventually try it.
They really pop when you put it on.
Yeah.
And obviously Richard's done a little bit with his painting here.
You know what that reminds me? I don't know if you guys in Australia you might have had it. I don't know if they had it in the US. Remember as a kid you had the like a toy called Smash 'em Up Derbies, and you had there was a green beetle exactly that color with yellow doors, and then you had a pink Chevy pickup truck with a blue bonnet and stuff, and you'd put them on ramps and you'd pull a ripcord and they'd smash into each other and all the bits would fall off. It's like, anyway, sorry, I digress, but that's exactly the same color scheme.
Well, as I say, I think for bots, obviously being, metal, the metallic paints work quite well across the board. So as I say, I look forward to seeing Drew's Hive Lords and Infestors when he gets a chance to paint them.
Yeah, I'm planning on doing a video for him. So if you're curious, Anthony, as to how to paint on those, then maybe that'll help.
Yeah, for sure.
Look, guys, we've got this Atlantican faction guide, and what's interesting with the faction guides, where they're going, they've got special rules attached. And so I'm going to throw open to everybody here, because obviously I've got it up on the screen here. The Atlantican faction rules, you've got under the sea, all aquatic or Atlantican units have the aquatic special rule, meaning that they can work in water. And I'll get Anthony to have a bit more of a talk about that. But I think that could make some very interesting scenarios if bots are actually found in the water on a tabletop, and what that could actually mean for them. And then energy dispersal. All units carrying a trident weapon are immune to surge special rule, which, if you're Electro Tyrant, would be absolutely terrible. But, there are other units that carry that surge special rule. So there are a lot of units, obviously, in the Atlantican force that, are immune to surge. And that makes for an interesting special rule for this faction. I'll throw open to everybody. What's everybody's thoughts?
I think it's a possible niche thing, depending on, like you said, what army you're going up against, but gives you such a sigh of relief that you don't have to worry about it, especially on your big units like Crab and Omen and everything, or even your little guys, where you're just like, okay, I can focus on what I need to without this guy targeting me.
Absolutely. Obviously, Anthony, you had some thought process behind this. You were instrumental in writing the rules. What were your thoughts?
Well, I felt like the aquatic was sort of nothing, because I don't know of anybody that uses like swamps or whatever. And even in other war games, I think swamps and aquatic stuff is probably the least type of terrain that you ever encounter on a tabletop board. But it just felt thematic to put it in. So, and I didn't want to change the cards too much, so I just made it a blanket thing across everybody. With the energy dispersal, I always try to think about, if you are having a 6-game tournament, what are the chances of, I want anyone rising to the top table to encounter one army that will absolutely stuff them up. That's at least one army. And so what I try to do is I'll try to put in a thing that is a direct counter to another army. And so really that energy dispersal, if someone wanted to build it like that, then they would have an advantage over Electro Tyrant's drone army.
Absolutely.
And so I just like the idea of going through a tournament and you go oh yeah, smash that person, smash that, and then you go, oh no, I'm facing such and such, and it just because having played it loads of tournaments over the years, it's sort of knowing who you're going to face. You're immediately trying to trigger how can I minimize my not necessarily loss, but minimize my exposure to this force that I know is going to be quite difficult. And to me, if you still win and perceive that, then you really you're worthy of the win of the tournament and stuff like that, because you've faced some forces that are not really that your ideal opponent to beat. And so that's sort of why. And I like it. Like, I wish people, like, I sort of can't wait for tournaments to start because I want to see that meta put into practice. And I feel that I know sometimes people are down on like tournament play, but as a game designer, although I don't really call myself a games designer, but I want to see how the meta deals with it. Because if you're just playing your mate every other day, then I think some people get the impression that their army's not good, rather than actually asking they're like saying, oh, the army's not good, rather than saying, well, how can my army defeat this army? And trying to think, oh, well, look, if I had that in there and like did a bit of like, theory hammer, I played it like this, then that actually might counter that a little bit. Those sort of things is what tournament play really encourages. And so you get into more of a mindset. Well, you've got this army; it has to face 6 different armies. I need to know how to use it and have the tools available to be able to, if I come across this or if I come across that.
Well, that's one of the wonderful advantages about the Atlantic Force. You've got such diversity across all of the units. You've got everything from infantry to specialized infantry to tanks to transport vehicles to bots or trinauts, which are piloted bots. It's a full spectrum of everything, and it means that you can build a very interesting list. And I know Stuart got right into it with his list that he'll talk about a little bit later, and obviously had things like a crab and an omen leading his force. He went really heavy with some of the really powerful units, which have those surge protections. So what are your thoughts on the faction rule, Stuart?
I think they're very thematic. I love the energy dispersal thing for a similar reason to what Anthony said. That if you're in a tournament or any sort of slightly competitive like venue for it, it does force people who maybe rely on that surge, which is quite a powerful rule, especially when it's on something that's got like a low SR. It forces you to then maybe rethink your army list building. So if I was taking now, knowing the Atlantican rule, if I was taking my Electro Tyrant army to a tournament, I'd have to think, well, I'm going to need something that can that doesn't rely too heavily on surge, like it'll at any sort of tournament stage. So I'd have to start putting things like Vex and Outrage in, just to kind of balance out your list. And the energy dispersal, if you have it on these big models, it means you can force positions a little bit easier, I think, as well. So if you're doing like I don't know, if you go up against Coils, because Coils have got a few surge units in there as well, haven't they?
They do.
The ABM and that, yeah.
ABM's quite a decent unit as well. You'd have to. It's just one of those things. I think it works quite well, which is why.
People relying on the ABM, it's neutered by if you come up against Atlanticans with a lot of Trinauts, right? And so it forces people to actually play rather than just rely on like their one hit wonder, So that's pretty much why I throw a few of those things in there like that, is because and that's actually why Electro Tyrants got a lot of surge, is because I wanted someone who tries to put all their eggs into Ducal and go and just try and clean up everybody, right? They come against Electro Tyrants and get absolutely hammered into the ground because they've stacked up too much energy on Ducal. So it's all about thinking overall picture for that meta and having people wanting to think about, oh, okay, who am I going to face? And I think probably in the first tournament, people won't even think that, and it'll only come when they get smashed a few times. It's like, oh, okay, I've got to factor that in, and do stuff like that. But well, with hopefully there'll be.
Sorry, Stuart.
No, I was just going to say that's it. It forces people to think about their list building, and I've played lots of tournaments, mainly like Infinity. I was big into playing Infinity tournaments, and after my first one, you kind of do think, oh, I played really well against that, but I got absolutely demolished by this. So it forces that. Well, if I just tweak one or two things in my list, if I take one of these or do that, then it kind of forces you to think more. I can't think of the term, but more about the possibility of what you're going to face. I mean, you can never truly account for everything, but it puts that like worry factor in about, how am I going to, if they put this unit on, how am I going to counter that?
Well, you want to take a balanced list that you play really well. You don't want to take an OTT list that you can play okay, but because it's OTT, you just win everything. And I think when you throw in like curveballs like that into different lists, then it forces people to take a balanced list, and they need to play it well.
And I think that's where, when we look at this Atlantican faction guide that we're going to look at, and some of the new units, there is such diversity in this force that you can make your force long range, short range, or something in between, or a combination. You've got all of those factors. So with that in mind, and this is one of my favorite units. So I may have mentioned this before the show started. I really like Groper. I know very few. I'll get onto the lists later. I don't think anybody took it, but despite having an SR10, that magnetic disruption gun with 4 range attack. Now, admittedly, you've got to be within 10 inches to use the MD, like the MDG, but I can just imagine that just getting up really close and getting boosted and just absolutely wiping something out. And for 16 points, that's a lot of dice at long range. Terrible in close attack. I can see it getting absolutely destroyed and mobbed, but it might take 1 or 2 things down before they even get to it. What are people's thoughts on Groper? I mean, it's a great unit.
I was this close to taking it. Like, I was trying, I was like wiggling things around in my list, but I love the aesthetic. Like, it looks like such a mobile, platform of just death. But the range of 4, especially like you said, if you're doing the disruption gun and everything, like throwing all those crit dice and everything, that's just, man, that's really gross.
It would just absolutely destroy. I mean, even Conspiracy, I'm talking Coil's Conspiracy against this. If it got close enough, it would really seriously damage it. Like, you could literally take Conspiracy down with this guy. And for 16 points versus 50, that's pretty good. So, yeah, I think
he's got to get within 10 inches of Conspiracy, though, let's remember.
Yeah, well,
like, Conspiracy isn't a slouch. He can pretty much blow anything away off the whole table from the whole range away. So surely, if anyone's playing Conspiracy, it's like, where's Groper? Oh, there he is.
He's gone.
Take that, 7 dice. Bam.
But he's a great character. What do you reckon, Stuart?
I think he's great. Like you say, that 4 critical dice. I mean, even if you roll moderately, you're probably going to come up with like at least 6 or 7 like damage, and then like that's a lot to try and soak. Just generally with normal dice, you're gonna possibly with like each shot probably half damage or 3/4 damage most units in the game if you get close. I mean, he's quite a slow moving like unit, like at 6 inches and stuff, but it's that what's it? It's like a relentless kind of missile, isn't he? Like
Yes.
that coming forward, like that's very slowly advancing. You kind of worrying about it as he's slowly inching towards that like sort of short range ban.
I reckon he's most dangerous in the first round because he's got an SR10, so he's going to be going last. So if you put him well behind cover, and everybody's progressing up the field, and then he pops out, whatever he pops out onto is going to die straight away. But then, of course, he's SR10, which means everything is going to focus fire on him from that.
And 5 hit points.
Yeah. So I rather suspect he's going to be a bit of a glass cannon. But
I think you have to build a list around characters like this. I think you have to like really build, like when I put in characters like this, I think everyone sort of looks at the stat line and gets all excited. But I think to get the most out of it, you really need to build it. Okay, who's going to protect him? Who's he going to run? Who's he going to run with? Yeah. How are you going to actually play him and stuff like that? I think that you really have to do like a specific list. I think the same thing about Electro Tyrant as well, is that you have to really, if you're going to take Electro Tyrant, you really have to build a list around him. You just can't just walk him out by himself.
Because people take him. But yeah, great troop. Really like this one, Anthony. He's on the list. And yeah, I'm excited to see him on the table. I'm going to get you to say it, Anthony, so I don't mispronounce this one.
Krakonia.
Another great character. Now, infantry model. Like we're talking, what, 6mm?
Yeah. Priestess.
Yeah. Very powerful. And effectively, by taking this unit, you actually get another unit for free.
Correct.
We've got a lot to talk about with this one. Obviously, SR3, so going early in the cycle. Movement 4, but then that can be actually enhanced by being transported by something.
Yeah, there's movement 4 standard for infantry now.
Range attack 2, close attack 1. So
yeah,
really that great there. It's that summon Oceanid, and more importantly, the Sorcery of the Sea that makes this unit very, very attractive. So
well, the Oceanid has Sorcery of the Sea as well.
Yes.
So you can essentially have 2 models on the and I think a Leviathan actually has a type of Sorcery of the Sea. I think it's called Tsunami, though.
It is.
It's a bit more powerful.
And we've got that coming up on a later slide.
Ah, okay. Yeah, one of my favorite units, actually.
The fact that Sorcery of the Sea can push things off objectives or push units back when they're actually in a particular position makes this a very, very valuable unit, I think, particularly in tournament play, as long as it doesn't get wiped out too early.
Yeah.
And, you know, I can get that Oceanid out. I think would be a very, very useful unit. Stuart, what do you think? How would you?
Sorry. I think it is. I think it's a pretty decent unit. It's the infantry. I didn't look at as much as the bots or the robots for it. But he's pretty interesting. And it's one of the things I quite like about the Atlanticans is the infantry seem to be almost an integral part of it in these special abilities that some of them have really adds quite a lot, like an interesting aspect to the play style. That makes sense.
It does. And I mean, we're going to show some special units later, which have got magnetic disruption guns as infantry, which makes them very interesting as well. Drew, what are your thoughts?
There's so many good new characters that when I was list building, I was like, do I take this? Do I not?
I struggle with that, Drew, too. I was like,
yeah,
okay, I want to take that, I want to take that, and I want to take that, but they're all great. They don't really fit in a synergized list. So I need to choose one or two. It was quite difficult.
But I like with your design space where you kind of balance special abilities with stats. Like Grouper has the really powerful attack, but he doesn't have the really great defense. And the stat line is your typical infantry, but the abilities are what make this really interesting and give it a broad sense design wise when you're playing it on the board as to like what you can do. Because Mark, like you were saying, you can do Sorcery of the Sea and push somebody off, or you can bring in an additional unit. So it's a robust unit as to what you can do ability wise, but you got to be real careful with it. So I like units like that where you have to consider what you're doing instead of just pressing W and going across the board.
I think that this is going to be big in tournament play because you can, again, like has been said, push off objectives, summon that Oceanid, which means for the 10 points you're spending, you're actually getting 2 units. And we're going to look at the Oceanid in a minute. You're getting 2 energy off that. So for every 5 points you're spending, you're getting 1 energy. And then the Oceanid gives you more energy. So if you're talking about an energy management game, you're getting a lot of energy out of that for 10 points. Yeah, those special abilities are great. I mean, this is the Oceanid. It's up on the screen now. It's free because it comes with that particular unit. Close attack, and this one's 3. So it's very powerful if you can get it up in close. And it gets Sorcery of the Sea. And
4 shields.
4 shields. And it's significant. Meaning it gets other bonuses there as well. I mean...
No, insignificance, you can't claim objectives with it.
Oh, my apologies. I thought it was about insignificant with the defense. My apologies.
Yeah.
Efficient is you get, obviously it doesn't have to use energy for one of its activations. Isn't that correct?
Yep.
So, but that Sorcery of the Sea pushes things off objectives. So as you were saying earlier, Anthony, you've got 2 Sorcery of the Sea for the 1 unit.
Yeah. I think the Atlanticans force is really, there's going to be a lot of movement manipulation. If you're taking Leviathan, Krakonian, Summon Ocean, and you can really move your opponent around and be quite annoying like that. I think coordinating and connecting all that is going to be a lot more difficult than it sounds.
Could I ask a question on that? If you throw a unit into a building, does it take damage?
Not on Sorcery of the Sea. It just stops. With I think with the Tsunami one, it does.
Yeah.
I think it specifically does. It does actually say there, but it's quite small. I can't read it, but it says that it just basically stops if it hits a.
It does say
it's an obstacle. Yeah.
But great unit. What are your thoughts?
Me? Are you asking me or the other?
Drew,
the other two?
Go to Drew first. What do you think of Summon Oceanid?
I really like him. I like minion play, like being able to populate the board and everything and kind of change the game state by dropping somebody down. The Sorcery of the Sea, real quick, if someone is on the board edge, does that work like a building and just push them to the edge of the board?
Okay. Yeah. There's nothing in Bot War that you can fall off the edge of the board.
Yeah. I figured that would come up with somewhere, and if somebody asked that, maybe they could use this as a reference. But no, I like that if you can get this guy into combat, he's gonna wreck some face. Like he can throw some serious damage, and he's got enough defense that you can walk him up and everything pretty assuredly.
I think he's gonna really. I think there's the obvious get off the objective thing, but I think the other thing will be if you play him right, and let's say, for instance, you've got Ducal lining up to attack someone, you go, no, you're not, move back, and now all of a sudden you're out of range for a ram attack.
Roper.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so or you can move people into range with the Groper.
Yes.
So I think that's really where it's like things like once people like really get it, how that works and get all the, I think the clever thing will be getting the strategy ratings right, which I always stuff up. You're talking to someone who raised up Maggot in the middle of a thing right in front of Rambot, who's SR2, and she just got whacked. like straight away. It's like, oh yeah, I didn't think about that.
It would have been thematic if it paid off, though.
Yeah, well, yeah. That's what I was thinking all the time. It's like, oh yeah, rah! It's like, bam, like whack-a-mole.
Stuart, what are your thoughts on Oceanid?
I think it's a really interesting little unit. Like you say, the ability to move your opponent's models around is actually quite powerful, because, like you say, with like Grouper, or any of the units that have got really good close in stuff, you can drag things forward. So if there's something in their army that's particularly powerful, or even if it's, like on objectives, you can drag them forward, you can push them away. It adds quite an interesting little level of like sort of tactical nuance, I suppose.
I think, Stu, you can only push away.
Can you only push away?
I think it's only push away.
In a way,
push back in a direct line away from the
yeah.
You did mention pull forward. I was actually going to ask a question going, hang on, that's not on the card. But if you pulled them towards you and you put them in close face-to-face contact, they'd be in then obviously close attack. They couldn't use their range attack. That could work quite well for some characters.
Yeah, but nothing stops you from moving the Oceanid round the side and pushing them away towards the other people, right?
Yeah, that's it. You can, if you position correctly, you could push. You can almost use it to push units. Like, and you've got two. If you've got two of these, because obviously you've got the unit that summoned them and the Oceanid itself. You can use both of them to kind of just keep pushing the unit back. As long as it's 10 inches. But if you get close enough, and you can do some really interesting things with it. And the fact that as well is really useful.
The what? Sorry.
The fact that it's efficient is really useful. Like that is it's good for energy conservation.
It's gonna hurt forces that are very combat or close range orientated, because you're just going to keep pushing people back, and they have to spend an activation to come forward again. And that's every time.
That would really work against the trashers.
Yeah, trashers, red cannoneers, beast lords. I think they're the three that stand out to me as is going to struggle against that, because all of those excel really well at short range or close attack.
Yeah, overlords as well.
Yeah, overlords. Yep.
For 10 points, 10 points is pretty. And for 10 points, it's quite a good value.
Yeah, really. And Ocean, 10 points effectively. You get both units. You get obviously all of the special abilities out of Krakonia, and you get obviously those close attack benefits, and obviously the summon the sea on both of those. It's and that's three energy for 10 points effectively once it's summoned. And they're efficient on the Oceanid, so that's effectively 4 energy. So for 10 points, that's quite valuable, in my opinion. And I think I can see people really loading that into their lists. I hope you got lots of infantry coming, Anthony.
Got lots of what? Sorry.
Infantry for Botwell coming. I can see people putting that in their list. Obviously, the Leviathan reference card, it's very similar to what's been there in the past. I won't dwell on it. It does include that tsunami that you were talking about, which is 3 energy to activate versus the 2 for the other one we were just mentioning. The Assault of Rust, I know we're talking...
The difference of that, as you can see at the end, for every fixed terrain feature the model has moved through on its 6-inch journey, it must take 1 attack dice worth of damage with no shields, which is why it's 3 energy and much more powerful.
But it's also very powerful when it comes to just going in and hitting things as well. I mean, it's a genuine Titan. So great unit. That's an old unit, but it's interesting that we've got that stat card obviously in the guide.
Yeah, I think a lot of people were saying, because I think just having it as the stat card, I think just makes it easier for people. Like I was making it as a big stat card, but I think putting it as a normal size stat card, people can just put it to the side. So it's just better as a reference. So I'll eventually probably do all the others like that as well.
It's helpful. Manta, I know, Stuart, you included this in your list, so I'm going to get you to talk us probably through this one. But it's got Surge, which is, I'm assuming, is one of the reasons you've taken it. But I'll throw across to you now.
Yeah, it's quite ironic in the list that I've done where I've taken 2 big hitters that are immune to Surge and then sticking they can't rely on it. I really like the Air Force aspect of Atlanticans. I mean, I've got a Broken Skies, and I really love the models from that. So what I wanted to do was have like quite a decent core of fast movers that are they're just immune to terrain. You know, they can go wherever they want, however they want, and just give me a bit of flexibility in movement. But that surge ability it's nasty, and especially at SR3, like it goes early in the turn, and so long as pardon me, so long as you're quite careful with it, you can cause some real damage early on, because I mean, he's really quick in the turn. There's not a whole lot of units that can kind of go ahead of it that are going to be heavier hitting.
The thing with hitting stuff like that, like nuclear shells and surge and stuff, is often you don't even have to damage someone to burn an extra cube than they would normally burn to just defend against it. So, like a lot of people are just like, you know what? If this surge goes through, I'm going to lose this anyway, or like so I'll actually boost it where you wouldn't normally boost it. Like if say you've got 3 shields and you've only got like 1 attack dice, right? People might, you know what? I'm going to boost it. And you're like, what? Why would you do that? Because the chance of just 1 going through makes such a big difference.
Well, that's it. If somebody stacked like 4 energy on, I don't know, take for example like Dougal, like you said before, if they've stacked 4 energy on Dougal, and then Manta comes along and chucks his a boosted attack, that's 4 ranged attack. Even with a combat shield, there's a combat shield. Yeah. You're still going to think, well, that's a potential additional 3 or 4 damage I'm going to take from Surge.
Yeah.
Like it's
quite, and you can use it to just stuff people up. Like if I've got just enough energy to do this ram attack, and this is what I'm planning to do with this ram attack, and then you shoot with that particular model with a surge. Well, look, do I burn an energy or take 3 or 4 wounds damage? You know, it's like, well, I may as well burn energy, but then you've stuffed the whole attack of the person up, because now they don't have enough energy, like to ram attack or to boost their attack to get the maximum out of it. So you've already won before you've actually caused any damage by forcing them to spend that extra energy that they would normally not have bothered about.
Yeah. And there's something even about this, like you were saying, if you're going up against Ducal or whatever with this thing and you do the damage, you know, someone's sitting there being like, this little 11-point model has done 4 or 5 points of damage to my, 28-point model, and that does something to him psychologically, I think.
Yeah.
What they're thinking is
I think.
So
they're thinking, why the hell can't I roll bloody shield dice properly? That's what I'd be thinking. It's like happens to me all the time.
But I mean, this unit's great. It's only 11 points. It's 3 energy. You're getting 3 energy out of that too, and that's really valuable
So I think it's a good battery unit for 3 energy.
Battery unit that has good range attack, and that surge on top of it's fantastic.
But even though it's 3 energy, don't forget it's really 2 energy, because you have to move.
Yes.
Every turn.
We've got Marlin, so we're getting to our Trinauts here. Obviously with this one, you've got titanium shell and combat shield. It's got a good SR rating of 3. Better at close attack. Only 5 hit points, but only 12 points and 2 energy. It's a good unit.
And it's got a Triton.
It does, which means it's immune to surge under the special rules that we've got. What are your thoughts, Drew?
I love the aesthetic of these new units. Like, I love how sleek and everything these guys look. The models are great. I like a low SR unit that's got this combat shield. It's not an ability that you see a ton of. So I really dig this guy. He's surprisingly robust with the titanium shell and the combat shield. And shield of 3, even though it's just 5 hit points. Like, it's got enough sustainability to be something significant on the board without costing you a ton of points and everything. So I think it's a good, help you move up the board, maybe even an objective grabber that could be left by itself and be stubborn enough to get you some good victory points and everything as the game goes along.
I think this unit would even hold its own against one-on-one against a Trasher.
Oh, that's a big call, Mark. That's a big call.
It's got a combat shield. So
yeah,
I'm not talking 2-on-1 where the Trasher.
Mind you, titanium shell will help a lot with that.
So it's still got a close attack 3, which is still pretty, like with some of the more average Trashers, it would actually face off against that. Against their
you might be right. Titanium shield shell might swatch, because most Trashers, I think all Trashers have some sort of weapon, which is going to be reversed against them. Interesting.
So anyway, great unit, fantastic. Stuart, I don't think you picked Marlin, did you? You went more with the Air Warriors, didn't you, with your list?
Yeah, I went more with the Air Warriors. It was a difficult kind of decision when I was going through the lists. I made a couple of lists up, so I sort of the first one was kind of just what I had available in box sets, and I was like, right, okay, that, which is the list there. I did do an alternative one where I went quite heavily into the new stuff. I mean, a lot of it's probably because I painted the new models in there. They're really, really nice figures. The new models, just beautiful aspect. But it was quite difficult to kind of, that's really good ability. And like Drew, I think you said like SR3, like going quite early in the turn and having that ability, like the shielding abilities, it's quite a decent unit if you're pushing forward to kind of have in your front line, almost like a shield wall against some of your other or against other like attackers. If you put him on an objective, he's quite tough to shift. I think.
I agree.
Marlin's a good like objective, like a position holder. You stick them there and he's shield up and almost like a Spartan.
He's not like equipped like one. Great model. I think he'd be very tough to fight. We've got Nautilus. He's got an MDG and titanium shell as well. 14 to take him and 3 energy. Quite a good unit as well. That's that MDG that's going to be especially dangerous with him. Within 10 inches with a range attack of 3, that's going to be very, very nasty. Would you not agree, Anthony?
Yeah, I questioned whether 14 points was too expensive, but then I realized that one of the things with the MDG is that you're always like risking a retaliatory ram attack when you get into MDG range, which is 10 inches. Whereas him having titanium shell and 7 hit points actually may negate some of those, the severity of some of those retaliatory ram attacks. So I'm still, my mind is still out on whether he is exactly like, I think you have to, once he's sort of someone that you would probably build a list around as well.
Yes.
To get the most out of. I don't, he's too expensive to be what I call like a warrior. But he doesn't have the close attack ability or even really the super survivability of a general class. So he's sort of stuck somewhere between warrior and general class. So that's really why when I was looking at him, I was like, yeah, I want to take him. Do I really take him? Like, how good is he compared to some of the other people? And I think you have to really have a specific goal in mind of how you're going to use him. Sorry, I talked around in circles there, I know, but
not a problem. Look, I think I actually picked this one in my list as my general. So I
think give him the upgrade that gives him +2 damage.
Yeah,
I think that's, once you give him the upgrade that gives him +2 damage, I actually think he does really move into that general class then.
I still think he's good with that range attack of 3, 14, 3 energy. There's a lot of advantages there. Obviously, I'll throw across to Drew. Your thoughts on Nautilus?
Yeah, like Anthony was saying, it's that balancing act with the MDG of like, does this unit that I'm trying to shoot at have ram attack, or can something move in and ram attack me? So while it's an extremely powerful ability, you got to hedge on that. But yeah, the titanium shell does give him a bit more robustness. I didn't even think about giving the extra health, but a 9 health on this guy would be, he'd stick around for a good while. But yeah, overall, generally good stat line, but I gotta agree. I don't think it's that top tier general unit unless you're gonna build a very synergized list around him where he can really make use of his special abilities.
Absolutely. Stuart?
Yeah, same. I think like he's a really tough little model. I think a lot of the Atlantican models with the titanium shell just make it really difficult for opponents that rely on close combat, like your like you said, like the Trashers, maybe the Overlords and stuff, because a lot of their advantages like come from some of these abilities. And things like this, it's almost like a trump card, like you're playing trump cards against this, where you're like, haha, no, you can't do that. And I think like Nautilus is quite a nice little unit for that. Even though, well, little unit, three energy, 14 points. He's quite a decent unit to as a core to like put your list around.
Absolutely. We've also got the Scuttler. Now, this is a new unit, Anthony. I know he's in ROTD too. And I'm looking forward to acquiring that for ROTD. But obviously, we're talking about him here for Bot War. Basically, a little crab-looking creature that's very, very effective in close range. Terrible at long range, but very effective at close range, but really cheap. 7 points to buy him. 2 energy. And you get a 3 close attack.
And you're going to remove someone's shield when you're close attacking.
Yes.
With combat mace.
And he deploys quickly too, because he's a scout.
Yeah.
I don't think anybody took him in their list.
Yeah, I did.
I did.
Yeah, okay. I took him. I think he's a great little battery. He's got enough movement that you got to still be careful, like trying to take him out, because if he does move into base-to-base contact with you, he's going to rip your arms off, basically. So, and I like the fact that he doesn't hardly have any shooting. He's just a little scuttler. So yeah, he could go down like with only 2 shields. hit points 5. But once again, there's a few upgrades you can take. Give him a combat shield. Give him the +2 damage.
Give him power of the sea and give him ram attack.
Yeah, that's a pretty good one as well. So yeah, that would make him pretty nasty. So but yeah, I don't know how many, whether it'll be taken, but I think it's like the next step up from taking your infantry as a battery.
Yeah.
Like, it's like, if you find that your infantry just keeps getting stepped on all the time, just like go up a couple of points to the scuttler and then see what happens.
Because you're still getting the battery, but you've got a little bit more close attack and some of the other.
Yeah, you got a little bit more oomph.
Great little unit. And it looks great on the table.
Mm.
I reckon if you could have like 10 of these on the table, that'd be quite scary. This whole horde of crabs coming across the table. But yeah, great unit. We've got Duke Aquarius. He's another new unit. He's got a magnetic disruption gun at a 9. Admittedly, it's only two attack, but at range. But he's a scout, which gets him up. He's a sharpshooter. He's efficient. And obscure.
A lot of special rules.
I didn't pick him, but he could be useful in a list, and if you could group it in there, that's another interesting one. Did anybody put him in their range or in their list?
No, I didn't take Duke Aquarius. No,
I nearly took one of these guys, the specialist squads, because they've all got magnetic disruption guns too. They've got their efficient, they've got their obscure, and they activate really early. You got a 1 and a 2, so that makes them quite useful if they can be dropped in the right location. So I think they're very interesting units. The last new unit in these lists is Swordfish, which is another one of our Trinauts. Is that correct, Anthony?
Is it the last new unit? There's one more, isn't there?
Which one?
The Mad Neptune.
Oh, Mad Neptune. I didn't include, but yes.
He's my favorite. He was one of my favorites. Well, Swordfish is essentially Marlin without the shield, but you can give him a shield upgrade to do a double Marlin if you want to.
Which would be very dangerous again if not stacking against the trashes. Any other thoughts on Swordfish?
Just a generally useful, cheap unit to add in if you need some, need a little bit of extra something without paying a ton of points for it.
And you want that close attack ability as well, because you're stacking against units that need that close attack. Supporting a groper. All right. Well, that takes us to our lists. So I've got my list up here first. I chose Nautilus with Groper, Necton, Mudskipper, Nami, Thermal, and Nebulous, and Aegon, Octo, Krakonia, and obviously the Summon Oceanid. That was exactly 100 points. I didn't take any upgrades. In total, I get 24 energy if all my units are still intact. And my hit point total is 57 for the whole list. It wasn't as good as Anthony's. I got to say, Anthony picked a list that had, I think, 60 hit points in total, which I was like, that's something I missed. But, obviously I've got here a range of Krakonia is the one that goes early, as is the Mudskipper. But generally speaking, everything's quite late in the turn. So if I was up against something that had a lower SRs, I might be a little bit of trouble mid-game. But if they do manage to survive, I've got quite a bit in there. And I can also bring in Leviathan if I wanted to. Quite dangerous as well. And I've got enough there with energy to obviously make Leviathan quite dangerous on the table if I chose to combine.
I think that's an important thing. A lot of people, when they're taking lists, they're taking like specifically to create the elemental avatar, right? Whereas people don't realize that the models that make them up are still good. You don't have to the fact that you would plonk the model down beside the table just in case could actually influence how someone deploys their forces and all that sort of stuff as well. Just that the fact that you've got that extra option, which is essentially like a free option. You can play a lot of mind games, I think, before the game.
I think the big one is as long as you've got enough in the way of energy in your pool, you're going to frighten somebody because they're just really scared that Leviathan could suddenly appear. But if you've got a list that's sort of short on energy, they then start going, well, even if you summon him, what can he do? It's 10 energy, isn't it, to maintain?
Yeah, correct. Yep.
So
you need 12 to do something, really. And then if you want to use the super abilities, you're going to need more.
Yeah, because Tsunami is 3, isn't it, from memory?
Yeah.
So yeah. That's where that energy, and that's why I've included a total of the amount of energy each of our lists had, just to give that idea of some of the other things that you might be actually able to do with it, depending on how you use your batteries. So that was, in my case, we've got that. There's quite a few ram attack in my list, obviously, because all those Leviathan formation units are all capable of ram attack, which I think is also useful. And you've got that in the Atlantica range. And then obviously lots and lots of magnetic disruption gun.
I get the impression that you like magnetic disruption gun, Mark.
I do, because you've by hitting me with it on our game where I think you were playing Red Cannoneers, how dangerous that gun really is. You completely destroyed my poor conspiracy. So yeah, that's where I went with my list. Obviously, Anthony, I'll get you to talk through yours.
Well, I knew that you guys were all going to take lots of bots and Tritonauts and stuff, so I decided to do completely the opposite. And I basically pretty much took everything that wasn't a bot or a Tritonaut. And my biggest R&R is the command tank at 24 points. And I thought to myself, because I think Bjorn was saying that the Kraken tank has been for long thought to be like a discount version of the command tank once you add the Noble House upgrade. And I just thought, is the command tank really worth it? Because it has ram attack and not artillery, which is sort of odd. But I'm thinking there that it's the combined list that's more powerful because you've got so many. If you're a flyer and you're facing this list, you're going to get absolutely crushed because two models with ground-to-air missile and MDG are basically MGG in the whole length of the table, pretty much, against any flyers of any type. So against special branch, deceivers, any sort of dedicated flyers, probably most of coils, are going to really suffer. Where I sort of suffer is that if I get into close combat, I'm in a bit of trouble. so because none of my stuff is really great at close combat. The two bots that I've got there, which are Necton, I took Necton, and I think it was, is it Aegon? I can't actually see because it's really tiny on my screen.
Aegon's there. Nebulous is there.
Oh, yeah. Necton. What's the very last one on the list? That's the Oceanid. Yeah, but those last three, they're actually going to be, especially Aegon and Nebulous, are batteries. So Necton will only really fight if I'm fighting against air warriors. But he's really an objective grabber with the other two, and they're just batteries to power. The real power is coming from the Mud Skipper and all the tanks.
Yeah. It's a good list. I mean, health point wise, you did better than me. You got 60 hit points there collected list for 100 points. Energy's fairly similar as well. So you got 24 energy to use across that and sort of divide out and spread. It's quite a good list. Then we've got Drew's list. Take us through it, Drew.
Yeah, I actually just realized that I put the wrong amount on Noble House. I put it at 7 instead of 5 because it used to be 7. So that would free up 2 points to do Ocean of the or Power of the Sea or the shield or whatever to put on. But I don't have as many activations as you guys, and I'm flagging a little bit on health, but I kind of wanted to give a all comers list. I had to put the Scuttler in here. Just it's probably one of my favorite new models. I just love the little dude. I don't know. It's just something about it. But I wanted to put. I waffled between doing the Crab and Omen, but I wanted a true beat stick, and I feel like Omen is Atlantican's like pound for pound with the special abilities and everything. I think Omen is the toughest one for the army. There's some others that are real close. But then, you can have the Mud Skipper bring in King Gills to use all of his abilities, just because the smattering of stuff that he has is just so useful if he's in the middle of everybody. And then everybody else is just kind of situational depending on what your opponents are throwing at you. I wanted to have Cayman with the magnetic disruption gun with the air support so he could fly into the back lines if you see a weak spot to be able to come in. And then everybody else, I just kind of see it as a staggering up the board, slowly taking everybody out. And of course, your opponent's most likely going to be focusing on Omen, so everybody else can kind of do what they need to and do chip damage here and there, trying to get what you need done.
I thought about doing Omen with the ram attack, and that would probably be pretty handy as well, because I think he's got Armored Might at the moment, which is still good, but you really need to speed him up, I think.
But if you put ram attack on him with Armored Might and that was on, that would be very bad.
I think is it replace?
Yeah.
Is it replace? Yeah, it's replace. I don't think it adds an extra super ability.
Yeah, but there were so many possible lists that I ran through, because you can do infantry. I thought about doing a meme list of just everybody with a magnetic disruption gun and just doing that.
That's what Mark did, isn't it? Isn't that almost...
That gun frightens me.
Yeah, but Atlanticans are in such a cool spot where it's not like, well, they're taking this, so it's obviously going to be this army or this army, but they've got this just broad breadth of what they can do at the moment.
Yeah, as I say, I think they make for a very interesting tournament team because of that, because you can stack it however you want. So if you come up against somebody like the Overlords, you can stack one way, or if you come against Electro Tyrant and Electro Tyrant's forces, you can stack completely differently. There's a lot of versatility, and I think it could end up being a very interesting tournament team to play with. And finally, we've got Stuart's army. Take us through it, Stuart.
Yeah, so I think I talked a little bit about this earlier on, but one of the main things I wanted to do is include a lot of the aircraft. So I really like the Manta's quite a we've talked about that earlier on, but he's quite a useful unit because he goes really early on in the turn, and he's got that surge ability. I think the Barracuda school can be quite useful as well. Dedicated flyers, they're quite fast, and again, you can use them to kind of, they can go anywhere and hit things quite early on in the turn. And then I thought I'd be a bit nasty with Omen and give him the upgrade to make him truly disgusting. There's 10 points. Yeah. Titanium shell, the iron skin. He's tough against ranged attacks. He's tough against anybody who's dedicated close combat. He's a nasty beat stick.
Did you give him the combat shield as well, or just the +2 damage?
+2 damage.
Just the +2 damage. It's +2 damage. Probably should have thought about the combat shield, but
Bit of
I
overkill.
was I came point under.
Uh,
2 points. It's 2 points.
You should add that. He's done it all for 99 points and brought his list in.
yeah, you could drop a point and find the shield. I think, is it 2 points or 1 point? I can't remember now.
I think it's 2 points. If it was 1 point, I would have had the combat shield on him, but
yeah.
And the other bots like Moray, Stingray, Hydro, they are because I was taking the aircraft. I thought, well, I'll put them.
It's a fast list.
That's it. Like I think it's the speed. Get up, get the objectives, get what you need to do. It's also it's quite low in SR as well, apart from obviously Omen and Crab. So I can kind of dominate the early part of the turn by putting my stuff where I need it to be, and then reacting to whatever the enemy does with Crab and Omen. So it's kind of early turn, quite a lot to do, and then late turn I've still got some options with my 2 big hitters.
That was one thing I noticed with the update was when I was building a list, I was trying to spread out my SR, and you can make a entirely super low SR Atlantican army now that's like completely under SR5, which I made one with Coil that was kind of similar. But yeah, I was surprised because you see their big units and they've got the higher SR and everything, but they've got some really beefy, respectable ones that can go really early.
And again, you can stack for a tournament on that.
Do a big alpha strike.
You got to be careful though, because you'll come up against someone with mind control. Or is it mind control? Mind read? I can't remember. The one that basically misses your turn if you're within a certain range of SR. And if you don't have a good spread, then everybody is susceptible to the mind read.
Yeah.
If you don't have a good spread of SR. But mind read's not really widespread. I think only overlords and deceivers have it. That's it.
Dr. Mind Twist.
Oh yeah. Does Dr. Mind? He does have it.
Does.
Yeah, I keep forgetting about him because he was added later into the guide from the campaign book, remember?
We were talking about him with our Bot Wars show on Coils, weren't we?
Yes, I think so.
That's one reason why I just picked up the Coils infantry, because I really dig that ability with Coils.
It's an annoying ability.
On the back line and taking something out with a mind.
Yeah.
Which I think was where we were going with it. Well, what's everybody's thoughts? I mean, at the end of today's show, we've gone through a whole heap of new units. We've talked about a whole heap of lists. What's everybody's thoughts on the Atlanticans? Drew, well, I'll get you to go first.
I like the change in aesthetic and color scheme just from, when you first open up the book and you are kind of flipping through it and everything. I've been going through reading all the lore and everything because that's the type of person that I am. But I like the abilities. I like the robustness of the army overall. I feel like they're one of the more versatile armies. Like everybody kind of has a specific thing that they do or a theme. And their theme is they're kind of like, they can do a bit of everything, but they don't have a ton of units that can focus on one specific thing besides like the magnetic disruption gun, which is, I think that's cool that it's specific to them along with titanium shell, unless Coil maybe is stealing that as well, along with the codes. But it's also cool that it goes along with that because they're one of the only ones that have mechs instead of just bots and then infantry. Like they have people actually piloting the bots. I don't know. They have a cool individual flavor to them and everything. So A+ overall.
Stuart, what are your thoughts?
I think very similar. Like they have a lot of variety. in the list, and the aesthetics for the models is brilliant. Especially the addition of the newer models like Marlin and what have you. I think they are just absolutely fantastic little models. But I mean, look at the lists that we've all created today. There's quite a wide breadth of different play styles there. You know, you got me tanking around two models with a lot of fast attack, and then Marks with the magnetic disruption good heavy list. There's a good breadth of variety in things that you can select, and I think that really helps make them a good choice. Plus, they look cool.
I've got to say, Drew having that scuttler is going to look great on the table as it charges across with its little pinches ready to grab onto some bot by the leg. And then obviously, Anthony, you've got all those tanks absolutely taking things down from the baseline. Completely different play styles.
Yeah, I like that. It was quite interesting writing it, because like I left it till last because of the amount of units in the thing, because I wanted to get the ones that I felt were most developed. Like Coils, I think, was the first guide that ever came out, and I wanted to get all the ones that I felt like I had a lot of stuff for sorted and get them out of the way quickly. But when I came to Atlantica, I actually had hardly. It was the oldest of the factions, really, but I hardly had anything. It was sort of trapped. It had been sort of trapped a bit in like, because it was the oldest of the factions, or one of the oldest of the factions. Like it's sort of older than Valiants and Deceivers, because it was the first bare bones developed faction as a faction. So when you sort of look at it, I think we had like the story of Omen versus Hot Wheel, but it was quite nebulous, like not really any. It was just like there was a thing between them at some point, and we didn't really have all the elemental avatar stuff developed and where Leviathan came from and all that, which was all developed through the Beast Lords and the Darkstains guides. So when I sort of got to it, I'm like, oh, we don't actually have any bios for any, like, because I normally like had written something in Facebook that I troll through and search and find bits that I've written. That's why I dump that stuff in Facebook, in the Facebook group, because I go back later and, oh, there's the idea that I've dumped there, and everybody's aware of it. Now I'll put it in the guide and tidy it up and expand it. But I went through the group and there was like nothing for any of these characters. And I'm like, oh dear. So we had to sort of like almost start from scratch. There was like some very, very light stuff written back in the days before I'd even thought about building the universe and all that sort of stuff. So, and the Tritanaut models and all that had been developed for 2 years. So there was plans to update Atlantica for like 2 years, right back pretty much after, maybe 2020. So that'd be 3 years. And those, they've been sitting there. And they sort of just kept getting pushed back. It wasn't right. And then it was odd how it all happened with the Atlantica guide, but I'm glad it's all out and I'm glad it all works and I'm glad the new units fit in. I tried to really, some of those earlier models, they weren't as flavorsome as some of the later models. So I really wanted to put that flavor in, especially the whole, how their society works around the elemental avatar, how they were created, that they were once humans, and all that sort of stuff is what I really wanted to get across, of how it all fits together and how it works and where the Atlanticans fit into it, because they've always been part of the main part of the story, but not really ever developed as everyone from the very start of Bot War had heard about the Atlantican War, than the Atlanticans.
It's what sort of impacted the democracy and weakened it at the start.
That's right. It's like they're the main protagonists of the whole, Earth-based part of the story. And it was sort of odd to look at and think, oh, we really haven't developed this lot at all. So we've been talking about the Atlantic War for like 3 years, and no one knows anything about the Atlanticans.
Well, we've got that law now, and obviously that will continue to evolve. You've also mentioned the new tournament guide that's come out too, and obviously we think more tournaments out there. Obviously, this particular faction lends itself to tournament, like some of the other factions. I'd like to thank everybody for coming on tonight. I hope everybody who's watching it at home has got something out of tonight. Are there any last-minute comments before we conclude for this evening? Thank you all for...
Stuart's pitch has disappeared.
Stuart's still there. We can hear him, but lost his picture there.
Yeah, I don't know.
Look, I'd like to thank all the guests: Drew from Ninetail Hobbies, obviously Anthony from Traders Galaxy, and Stuart, our painter extraordinaire from the UK. Thank you all for coming on, and we'll look forward to seeing you in the next session that we're going to have, hopefully either September or October. Probably September.
Awesome.
Great.
Thanks, Mark.
Thanks, guys.
See you, everyone.
Cheers.